A subscriber to our channel sent us this message. Can you please make a video on how to behave on the first day at work? Do's and don'ts and how to make a good impression. For the new year, we thought this is a perfect topic, so here we are making that video. In this video, we're going to give you 5 tips for your first day at work. We're going to talk about things like how to greet your colleagues, should you bring presents or not, and what to expect from your very first day at work. Hey, my name is Jen, and I'm from Guatemala.
And mine is Yvonne, and I'm German.
And together we're from simplegermany.com, where we create English content to empower internationals to settle into life in Germany more smoothly. First of all, a massive disclaimer. This whole video is based on our experience of working in Germany. We cannot speak for the whole country, and every company, city, person is going to be different. But this, if you feel a little bit unsure of what to expect, these are 6 experiences that we can share because I've worked in 4 German companies and you've worked in 2.
Well, plus we're going to sprinkle a few experiences from our community that we've been informed about,
yes,
right?
That is true. Yeah, 100%. So let's start with tip number 1. How do you greet your colleagues? The basic rule should be, in our opinion, to follow the lead from the other person. If you have a remote job and you're going to be working primarily or 100% from home and your first meetings are going to be online, then you should follow the lead of whoever is the host of that meeting. If it's a one-on-one with your supervisor, maybe there's some chit-chat before you go into business. If it's a group meeting, maybe there's an introduction that you're new, but that's about it. So just follow the lead. Prepare maybe 1 or 2 sentences to introduce yourself, where you're coming from, that you're excited to join the team and work with everyone. But in my experience, this hasn't been the norm. It's been really, you're new, straight to business, and maybe in the Kaffeepause, we talk a little bit about ourselves with Germans.
Which, of course, online, the Kaffeepause is a bit more difficult to handle. So we can talk about onboarding a little bit later in the video, but pretty much be open-minded and ready to be quiet, kind of reserved or outgoing, depending on the culture that's being portrayed.
Yes, 100%. Now, if you're going physically to an office, again, follow the lead of the other person. If they're extending their hand for a shake, then go for that shake.
Go grab it.
If they want a hug, if you're a hugger, I would say you kind of have to hug because you're not going to say sorry, I don't hug.
Yeah.
Well, you could say, sorry, I'm not feeling very well today, or I'm sweaty, or something like that. Maybe.
No, not on your first day.
And if they have no physical contact with you, then don't do any physical contact. In my experience, every time that I've met a new colleague, as far as I remember, we've never given each other handshakes. That's just what old people do. Now, I'm considered old, I think. But contrary to supervisors or bosses, they would go hi, Jennifer, welcome to the team. Good to have you on your first day. And then you give a sturdy handshake. But you have had very different experiences as well, right?
Yes, I must say I've worked in 2 very different companies when it comes to culture. One was very dusty traditional German, where literally the supervisors were also on a last name and Sie basis versus the colleagues were on a du and first name basis. And there, because the culture was a bit stiffer, it was very much either a handshake or just hi, I'm the new person. And definitely what you said, straight to business and kind of my tasks, and the chit-chat would happen on lunch breaks or pre and after work. However, in the second company, the culture was so warm and really more as if this is part of your life and not really this clear distinction between work and life. And there, because I've also had interviews, of course, with my supervisors, I was greeted with this massive hug. And since I'm a hugger, I also returned that hug. And in consequence, whenever I became the hiring manager and I hired, I also greeted all of my new people with a hug because I've met them before in the interviews, right? In the interview, of course, I gave them a handshake, but there was already this rapport and I really wanted them to feel welcome. But this highly depends on the personality of the supervisor, the colleagues, and on the company culture, I would say. That is actually the number 1 defining factor.
Yes, the culture is very important. I remember I was working in this corporate job and there was a person from Latin America who got a little bit into trouble because they were a bit too touchy with another colleague during a meeting, to the extent that all the other Germans felt uncomfortable enough to report it kind of to the supervisor, and then it became this massive deal because in Latin America, our culture is that we're talking and I can touch your shoulder, I'm oh, you're so fun, However, in this, because it was the first time this colleague was in the company, everyone felt like there was like a massive, too much oversharing in a way.
And also, I think from your description, the person being touched was an intern, right?
Yes, an intern, a German intern.
There was also this power
maybe,
difference, right?
How about this? A young German intern. So that portrayed this this whole like everyone needs to respect their space. So I would say if you come from a warm country like mine, Guatemala, and you're very touchy, although it might be hard at the beginning, I have tried my best to reserve myself because I know Germans really like to have their space and their privacy versus I know that in other cultures like Guatemala, we just like are all over the place each other, right?
And again, I would say it's different in a meeting versus in you walk into the office and you get welcomed on a
100%.
one-on-one basis, right? So when, again, a German makes opens, does the body language, I'm going to welcome you with a hug, again,
it's okay.
Follow the lead, right?
Yeah.
But if you're in a meeting where it's really about to talk business, of course, I'm not going to do this. Even I don't do this, and I'm a touchy German.
Yeah, but you are not Guatemalan.
That's what I mean. I'm a touchy German. Yeah.
Another important thing is that if the person introduces themselves in German and they go with their hello, I'm Frau oder Herr and their last name, most likely that means that you would need to treat them with a Sie, with a very respectful hierarchical Sie. Rather, if they go and they say, hey, I'm Jen or I'm Ivan, first name, then most likely it's going to be a du. Now, the tricky part about here, I think if one is a foreigner, is that you don't know if it's a first name or last name, if it's a name that you never heard before. So for me, the trick has always been like, do I hear a Frau or a Herr? Then I know it's a last name. If I don't hear that, then I assume it's a first name, even though I might not have understood what that first name was.
Yeah, and also if you get introduced with, hallo, ich bin Herr Schmitz, then I would say, hallo, ich bin Frau Koppen. I would also, my name would be the last name with Frau and not suddenly I'm Yvonne.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So again, you got to match that. Okay. Number 2 is the question of should you bring presents for your first day of work? And I think this is a big question mark, especially like I mentioned, maybe from warmer countries. I don't know, by warmer, I mean like more, how do you call this? When you're friendly or more open to personal contact cultures. Because we've had community members from Latin America and even the US who they consider bringing a small souvenir from their hometown or some food or something for their first day. And I would say, in my opinion, this is a fantastic idea because it breaks the ice and it's really giving an opportunity and a bridge for Germans to open up. Because by interacting or accepting this present, for some reason, it's like giving a permission that we can be personal and we can talk and chit-chat a little bit. That is my perception. What do you think?
I agree to a certain extent. So I would say there is a very fine line of bringing presents that could be seen as, wow, you're just trying to be overly friendly and kiss people's butt on the first day, versus really being this genuine, I'm here and I'm excited. So food, definitely, especially if it's self-made in terms, Germans are suckers for sweets in terms of cakes.
Self-made.
Cupcakes, anything homemade, exactly. That is highly appreciated because I think it's, of course, about the taste and the flavor, but more about the effort, the time we put into creating that. If it's a cake that you bought at the bakery beforehand, definitely not the same impact, 100% not. So that is a win. If, again, it is in an appropriation and not suddenly like ounces and mountains of cupcakes
You mean in proportion?
Yes.
Because I don't know what in proportion means.
In proportion.
In proportion, okay. Yeah. Like one cake, right? Yeah. One thing, yeah.
Yes. Then we had our community member from the US who brought a little, what was it? Like little keychains from the city. And that is something super cute. To be honest, for me as a German, I'd be more like, oh, depending how it looks like, might be a bit kitschy or whatever. It's like, I'm not going to use it, but thanks for the attention, that you're bringing. So it needs to be something small. It cannot be something super big or expensive because then it can tip to the other scale and you might be, especially from the colleagues, be observed very suspiciously.
Yeah, that is very true. That is a super interesting perspective. On the other hand, we've also had a community member who on their first day, on their desk, they had a really big bouquet of flowers and like nice note, welcome to the team. So it highly depends, again, on the culture. But I would say on the safe side, if you want to bring something self-baked or if you bake and you like baking, that is like a win for sure.
And it doesn't have to be the first day. It could also be at the end of the first week.
Yeah.
Just something to kind of like celebrate a first milestone or your arrival or whatsoever. Regarding the desk, the decoration with the bouquet of flowers, In my second company, though, warm culture, we always had a bouquet, not a big one, but a small bouquet of flowers. And we always had a welcome card that was signed from the entire team. And even I think in the colder culture, I also had a welcome card. But the bouquet of flowers, the massive one, came at the 6-month mark when I passed my probation period.
Wow, that is so nice. I remember in some companies I would receive like a welcome package, but that is mainly branded material, like maybe a coffee mug or a backpack.
Like merch.
Like merch kind of thing. But to be honest, I feel like I've never had this massive welcome with like a signed card.
Yeah. But let's just say in general, I would say the welcome is usually warm.
Yes. Oh, the colleagues are looking forward to meeting you and working with you, which will go next into our topic. So the very first day of work, we have 3 more tips regarding onboarding, for example. Now we can speak from our experience, and I've had very different experiences from onboarding. In one company, literally on the first day on my desk was my onboarding plan printed out with 16 tasks that I had to do, which included reading guides or articles on certain topics, reading help articles from the company itself on how to deal with certain situations, the code of conduct, the this and this, and also trainings that I had to book. So I had to make the effort, if the person was in the office, to go introduce myself and be like, hey, I'm Jen, I'm gonna do a training with you, I'm gonna send you an invitation. And then I had to cross everything off. And at the end, I think of 2-3 weeks, my supervisor expected kind of like a completed form. So very hands-on. I've had other companies where I show up and I have no idea what's going to happen. And I just sit there with my supervisor, and then my supervisor has sent me to another colleague, and then the colleague to another colleague. Then it's lunch break. Then you have an hour to relax. Then someone comes and pick you up. And it's kind of more like they deliver me to the next person, and I never fully understood like what's happening next. And I've had a hybrid of both. So I've had very different onboarding. And again, it highly depends on the company and the culture in the company.
100%. Everything depends on the company and your supervisor, because maybe one supervisor takes more initiative than the other. And I've had also 2 different experiences. I think in the first company, there was no real plan per se, but I had like one mentor. It's also quite common that there might be a buddy, like a mentor buddy kind of system, who I shadowed for the first 2, 3, 4 days, and who I could ask all kinds of questions. Of course, maybe I expanded the questions to other colleagues to not just bombard the one, but that is quite common. And then in the other company, we made a big effort of developing a real onboarding, like you just said, where also ideally a group of people starts on the same date. So kind of like the new colleagues all get collected and start on the same date. And then there is a absolutely planned first or second week of onboarding where you go through different meetings with different learnings in terms of presentation of what you need to know throughout your work life at the company. So very, very different. And it really depends. But there ideally should be some sort of plan.
Yes, and what I wanted to say with all of this is that throughout all the experiences that I had, I always had the same sentiment or the same feeling that it's okay, take your time, you're here to learn. And I never felt this expectation of you have to hit the ground running and I expect maximum output from you. It was a very respectful and warm environment in that sense, where I felt, even though sometimes I might have felt bored, you could say, because it was like very slow, but that just shows
and no one has time for you.
Also another option, but there was this not expectation that at the end of 3 weeks you didn't do this and then you get into trouble or something like that. Another interesting part or tip is, what do you do for lunchtime, your very first day? And again, here I've had very different experiences. I've had the experience of a colleague, maybe my buddy, asking me to go out for lunch with them for the first day, and either we would go to a restaurant and we each pay our bill, or we go to the company canteen. Canteen is a German word for the how do you call this? Like the food court of the company, also where you pay yourself. Sometimes I would say, I think once a colleague took me out for lunch for my first time and then they paid. And I found that like super nice. Other times in other companies, I've had to have my first lunch alone at the cafeteria. Not cafeteria, but there are these kitchens sometimes in the offices. And I just sat at the kitchen alone, but then sometimes maybe a colleague shows up or maybe a little bit of chit-chat before and afterwards. And yeah, I think lunch for me has always been the most awkward thing because you don't know what's happening really.
I agree. And lunch is, in my opinion, taken very seriously by German colleagues. It's very rare that you work through lunch. Some do, but usually not as a standard. And I agree. It's either a buddy. So I would say in my case, there's always been a plan for lunch on the first day, either with one person of the team, either with the entire team. That's really a team lunch, and that might not be on the first day, but maybe on the Friday of the first week.
Right, yeah.
It also depends what weekday you start. But usually in the first days there, in my case, has always been some sort of team lunch just to warm up
and
welcome. And that team lunch sometimes is paid by the supervisor, and sometimes one pays themselves. But usually it gets communicated beforehand.
Yes, that is true. So the tip here is I wouldn't bring lunch for my first day, but maybe some snacks in case lunch is either too late, because it depends, right? Then you can maybe munch on something a little bit beforehand. And for the first day, I would plan on buying my lunch either at the canteen or a restaurant, even if you're with company or alone. And also during lunch, I really think it's important for the first times to observe what others do and understand the culture. I worked in a company where there was a kitchen and people would go cook their lunch during lunchtime, and you could maybe join that as well. Maybe not the first day because you need to also pitch in for the groceries and stuff. And I've had companies where actually they send us SMS beforehand or a Slack notification so you can pick the restaurant. So every company has lunch culture very interesting for me. And I think if you bring your food for the first time, you kind of like remove yourself from the equation of participating in something fun. And I found it very stressful for also the first day figuring out where's the microwave, how does the microwave work, how long does it take, and there's maybe like a big line and I have another meeting. So I always found bringing my own lunch for the first day, maybe a week, was way too much stress. So that's just maybe another tip.
I would say that's generally a deeper culture, because it's quite common in Germany that colleagues bring their own lunch. Others always eat out every day. It really depends on the personality. I've had colleagues who eat out like in external, not company restaurants every single day, which I was like, that's a bit like that's not too budget friendly also. And others who bring their lunch every single day. So that is more of a personality thing.
Yes.
But again, observe, find your way, what do you prefer. Also, depending on how big the company is, do you have this Mensa canteen kind of thing where the lunches are really cheap because they get subsidized? So again, it can be multiple different variations. Observe. It's always the observation is the best key to everything, and then find your own routine.
Yes, very true. Now for our fifth tip/topic is that in my experience, there's no real chit-chat with German colleagues at the beginning. What do I mean? So as I mentioned, so it's kind of like this balance. I don't want to portray that it's a very cold experience. I haven't felt that it's like very cold and distant. I just felt it's very down to business. So if we have a meeting, an onboarding session, a first colleague might say like, hey, ich bin Sebastian. Hi, I'm Jen. Nice to meet you. Okay, so today I'm going to teach you about, or we're going to talk about, bam, straight to the point. No real chit chat in terms of like, hey, where are you from? Welcome. How are you feeling? Nothing like that, for example. Because I think also in meetings, there's a very set amount of time, 45 minutes, maybe an hour and a half, depends on how long. And there's this topic that needs to be talked about. And maybe if the topic is finished and there's still some time, then maybe there's room for chit chat. That's why I think it's super cool if one brings either a self-baked something or a little souvenir or something to be able to, like I said, open that communication and conversation to the colleagues at the very beginning. Versus when I've had meetings with international colleagues that have been working in the company and they're part of the onboarding, we usually obviously start with chit chat with, hey, where are you from? Oh my God, how long have you moved here? Blah, 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 blah. So it's a very different experience, and I've had very different experiences when being greeted. Of course, there's the exceptions of Germans who are very curious and also start with chit-chat, but just be aware that just because someone doesn't fully start chit-chatting in a meeting with you doesn't mean that they're not interested. It's just this culture that we're here to do a task. Let's do that first, and if there's some leeway, then we can go and grab a coffee or have a conversation or something like that.
Yeah, I would generally agree to that, yeah.
Oh, thank you, yes. In general, the big lesson for your first day at work in Germany is to be observant, don't be shy, and just mimic kind of what others are doing. And if you get an opportunity to participate in an after-hour drink or event, go. This is the chance. This is the moment where you get to bond with your coworkers. Even if you don't drink alcohol and they want to go to a bar, don't worry, because in Germany, every bar has alcohol-free options. And no German will bug you for it. Actually, if you have an alcohol-free beer, I don't think they would even care. But just the fact of going, that is a moment where you can bond and really create more meaningful connections at work. At least that has been my experience. For you too?
Yeah, absolutely. I would take any opportunity, whether it's an after-work drink, a lunch break, a coffee chat. Usually also doesn't even have to be planned. Usually a lot of the, let's say, private chit-chat happens in the coffee kitchen when, there's a little line to wait for the coffee machine. And even if it's just a little, not deep, superficial chat, you meet people get to know you. So just take any opportunity away from the desk to be curious.
Yeah, and have conversations. And being nervous for your first day at work, whether in your home country or in Germany, is completely normal. So don't worry, everybody knows this. And if you're having your first day at work and you're watching this video, it's amazing because that means you're moving to Germany and you're starting a new chapter in your life. Now, going to work is one part of the equation. At the very beginning, there's some bureaucratic steps that you absolutely must take care of. And for that, we prepared a video for you about the 10 things you should consider taking care of, actually that you should take care of when you land in Germany, which you can check out here on the left. Until next time, cheers!